Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. So, big news for today. The Age of Sigmar Battlescroll update just dropped today, and with it, a lot of interesting material to go over. Yeah, like I was actually really looking forward to this when I heard it was coming because I was expecting some big changes, and I was not disappointed. So, let's get started. So, what exactly are those big changes? Well, for one, but a lot of things really. Like this is honestly one of the biggest updates I've seen in a very long time. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say that the last like updates with that Age of Sigmar has gotten were necessarily bad, but I just felt that they weren't particularly extensive enough, or maybe they were just too uneven. Like for example, like maybe there was a big change in one army and then another army got like nothing. But no, I think pretty much every single army, and even the soon to be legends armies, which you know who I'm talking about, they all got some amount of changes, and even some changes to the core rules. Not a lot, but still some. Like that's still more than I was expecting. Because like I don't know, I kind of feel like GW, and maybe at least this edition, hasn't really been really keen on wanting to change like core fundamentals of the game, at least not as much as I felt like previous editions. Because I think by this point in like third edition, we had like multiple big changes to the core rules. I forget what they were, but no, here they're finally getting into it. Not a lot, but I think it's in the right direction. But much more than that, though, the points adjustments and the regiment updates, however, those were really big in my opinion. These were actually, I was not expecting this level of change up, especially to points, because I kind of just got used to the whole thing of just like maybe just a couple of points adjustments, per army here and there. But no, this was really big, and we're gonna get to more of that in a second. So just to go through them, we're going to start here just with the summary of some of the rules changes for the different grand alliances. These are some. I'm not now. Don't now. Let me just preface this. I think these are all really good. I think these all have some like some definite uses, and I think they some of these do really fundamentally change up how these armies are going to work. Now I will admit though these aren't quite as extensive as maybe I might have wanted, at least in a couple areas. But to be fair though, I have so many like little ideas and kind of like wants and likes and dislikes that I don't know of any. I don't think of a battle scroll could have really fixed them all. Because in my because let me put this like this. When I think of each of the armies, there's like 10 or 12 little tiny things like I would change, or I would like to change, or I think it would be more thematic or maybe better balanced. So obviously those all can't possibly come in one battle scroll. Like those will maybe change over the long term, but these are perfectly fine the way they are. So what do we have right here? Well, basically, one of the big thing is for order, for the biggest thing for Stormcast is they finally added the proper keyword to Iona's Cryptboard. Honestly, big thing on that, because it's definitely going to help them, definitely from a rules perspective, but also just for like fourth wall break here. I think it's just kind of dumb when they just miss things like keywords. Like whenever I see stuff like that, I'm like, come on, guys, can't you just like get like an intern to proofread your stuff? Because this is not the first time that there have been units you've just literally really just missed the keywords for. Like that's kind of just an embarrassing thing to overlook. So I'm really fix that. Cities of Sigmar, they I like that they finally changed up the Fusel Major. The Fusel Major I don't think is necessarily bad, but I kind of feel like we're not really seeing them as much. Well, one of the big things with that is that they had the same problem with a lot of foot slogging heroes. They're kind of like not the greatest, especially when working out things like like regiment inclusion. But there's been some real change in that, which I'll get to later when we get to points. But I like that they changed up their rule that it works in melee too, which I think is fine. I mean, maybe it's not as thematic, but it's just better rules wise. Talia Vedra, they've changed up her rule now. Instead of like returning like 3 wounds worth of models, now it gives +1 to wound and then a +1 ward. Sorry, I mean a 5+ ward. Personally, I think that actually I do agree that is better. Now, will they cause her to be included more? We will see. We will see. Personally, I actually like Talia Vedra, but I don't. I'm not really. I think some people have been saying she's not as competitive. And there are some things I agree with in that regards, and some things I disagree with. I think she's a very good line breaker, and she definitely helps. She definitely like she's a good like area of effect buffer. But I do also agree too that she can have a tendency to go down too quickly, and focus firing doesn't take much to take her down, and she can be lacking in durability. So I agree with both sides. So the both sides of the fence are kind of have some good points about her. But anyways, the Karajan Overlord's big thing is now their Sky Vessel cover now gives -1 to wound to unbind. Sorry, I'm reading. I'm sorry. I was mixing them up with the Seraphon. Sorry, they give -1 to hit for all attacks, not just shooting attacks. Again, I think that is a great rule, and it's really going to help Karajan, especially their infantry, when working out, like damage reduction. Now, I will admit, from a fluff perspective, I don't quite know how that works. So in melee, I guess maybe the sight of the boats like intimidates their rivals enough that they don't hit them. I don't know. Look, just use your imagination. It's fine. I think this is a really good idea for like balance reasons, so I'm fine with it. Seraphon is pretty much what I expected. Like Lord Croak basically just got better, and he also got some extra range on his spells and stuff. So I think that's all good. And also gave the Ripperdactyls and the Pterodons more leeway for coherency, which honestly I think is perfectly fine. Anything with wings over a certain threshold needs this because it's just so ridiculous on the board. Like just I've seen people in trying to keep them in coherency, literally like turn them to face in every single direction just so the wings line up. It's just something they need to do. And again, they're flying in lore. They don't need to be within like 2 feet of each other. They're flying all over the place. They need bigger coherency. With death is I think is a little was I think a more substantial changeup. So Discorporate now works in the hero phase and it lasts for the whole turn rather than it being a reaction. So basically, it still works pretty much the same as it did before. However, because you need to pick them ahead of schedule, what this basically does is that while it doesn't change the effect it has on the army, it changes how your enemy can basically react to it. So before it was kind of like it was basically kind of like a surprise gotcha, like, oh, okay, you're going to attack me or cast a spell on me. Well, bam, I'm going to discorporate. Well, no, now your opponent will know ahead of time who you cast this on. So they'll be able to work with it a little more. I think definitely Nighthaunt, in my opinion, more than any other army, probably got the hit with the most nerf bats because honestly, in my opinion, I consider this a nerf on it because a reaction, in my opinion, is usually, in my opinion, better than something that just lasts the whole turn because you can create a sense of well, again, it also depends on what kind of ability, but for this particular kind of ability, you kind of want it to be more of a reaction, so it's more of a guess on where you're going to use it. Now your opponent can work around it, and they basically know how to priority target. So that's a downgrade. And also, Nighthaunt got hit by the points bat, but we'll get to that soon. Flesh Eaters, they got some good changes right here. Like to Grand Justice Gorman, now can generate noble deed points like better, and also they added the loyal subjects ability to make it easier to generate noble deed points. That's fine. Flesh Eaters, I don't think are like in my opinion, I don't think they're the worst army. They're not the best either. I think they're just like a lot of other armies. I think they're just after this, they're going to be a good middle of the roads army. They're not going to be top tier after this. They weren't top tier before, but they weren't the worst either. So, well, they weren't the greatest, I guess, but like still, I think after all this and the points adjustments, they're going to do fine. Oziarchs really wasn't a lot, a lot of changes there. Just some change-ups to the Gothazar Harvester's Bone Harvest ability. Again, Oziarch Bone Reapers, again, they're kind of like, I feel they're kind of like, they're doing okay right now. I don't think this will have an immense change on them because really Gothazars aren't, in my opinion, especially this edition, they're not like the Spirit Breakers they were of editions past, where they were bringing back like a million models every phase. No, the big thing with OZRs right now it's Catacross builds are the big bane right now. So honestly, if there's ever going to be a nerf, I think they need to nerf him a little bit. Not that I think he's completely unstoppable. It's just they need to nerf Catacross to make him a little less auto include, because it just kind of just seems a little too auto take at the moment. Like, not bringing him just feels like you're nerfing yourself, even in casual. So whatever. For Chaos, about what I expected. Vermin King is now Wizard 2. That's fine. He probably should have been from the beginning. Increased range for the Plague Furnace and Screaming Bell, good. Because, quite frankly, Pestilens are really not doing so good this edition. Like, they've had quite the run. They started off, like, in earlier editions, being OP, then being the best, then sucking, and that's kind of been carried over into this edition. So anything that can help them is good, or at the very least, encourages you not to just spam like rattling guns and stuff like that. Blades of Corn, they're fine. The Blood Tithe is now makes more sense, which honestly is good. Like, I thought, what per phase I think is perfectly fine. Like, Blood Tithes are not OP, and you probably won't be able to get them off every phase anyway. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to be just get them when you need them. Hedonites, they're Hedonites. I think that's what God now have companions now benefit from euphoric killers. Good, because again, this is going to as I think I've heard some people talking about. This is really going to help chariots, where like 50 to 60% of their output is from their mounts on their chariots, and Slanesh has like probably the most chariots in the game, so you might want to actually encourage them so people actually bring them. So that's a good thing. Maggotkin, just some change ups to like coherency ranges and fleshy abundance. That's fine. Like a little bit more, flexibility of fleshy abundance is fine. I don't think it's going to have a massive impact, but it's good that they're doing that. Destruction. I'm gonna be honest. These aren't exactly what I was looking for. Gloomspite, biggest thing is they just got a bit of a change up to like their loom boss on Mangler Squid. So now it's a hit instead of wound. I think that's probably good. Like, Gloomspite I think it's more than a lot of armies have some problems with hitting, like literal hitting. So I think that's probably better. Ogre Maw tries they add +2 to their trampling charge rolls. I think that's good. Yeah, like again, they like Ogre Maw tries have some inherent problems, especially with their Beast Claw Raider side of their army. So anything that can help in any regard, I think, is good. And also, they're also lowered the chanting values of prayers from Everwinter Prayers, so that's good too. Because again, as it stands right now, the Beast Claw Raiders side of the army of Ogre Maw tribes is kind of hurting right now. Right now, the big thing with them is it's like Glutton and Iron Gut spam. So they're not the Man Eater side is doing fine. No, not the Man Eater. The Gut Buster side is doing fine. It's the Monster Mash that needs help. So anything that helps is good. And as for the Sons of Bahamut, basically they essentially just got some damage increases. Like, they get more attacks. Their units are getting more attacks. They're getting a lot. They're getting more mortal runes out. That's perfectly fine. Personally, I think if they have one weakness, I feel this edition, it's that they've definitely, in terms of overall damage, they're not as consistent they were in editions past. Like, I think they're just as durable as they ever were, but they definitely took a bit of a hit on the damage department, so they have a real tendency of getting like locked up in combat a lot, especially when fighting other monsters. Like, they kind of just like they're like this big wall of meat that just they can take are made of iron, but they slap like a butterfly sometimes. Especially if your opponent can affect their hitting, like their to hit rolls. So anyway, I think that's a good idea. So, anywho, yeah, that's pretty much the summary of all the base changes. Obviously, there were more changes throughout, but these are the major ones they summarized. Okay, so but now this, however, the next big thing out of here, I would feel, is the even more important thing, like changes up. Now, not saying the other changes weren't important, but I feel like this is going to be one of the biggest things right here going on. For one, they've made some change ups to how seizing the initiative works. Now, I have some thoughts on this that lean towards good and bad. So basically, essentially, how it works now is if you go second in the battle in the previous battle round, and then you choose to go first in the next one, then your opponent is now the underdog, and for like basic, and the underdog essentially for like the rest of the game until your opponent does that. Or however, now here's another caveat though. If the player is behind by 6 or more points, then they don't suffer any penalties from taking 2 turns in a row, and your opponent is no longer the underdog either, and is not the underdog, and they can use a tactical gambit for the rest of the battle too. So essentially, okay. So basically, what's happening here is that they put another penalty for doing the double turn, but they've also made it so that a person who's behind by a significant amount of points, a 6, no longer get like basically cancels out a lot of the effects of the underdog, while also allowing them to get tactics again. Okay, here's what I want to say. I like and dislike this. I like in that I feel they're really, really, really fine, like going in the right direction with like balancing out the double turn. My issue, what I have with this is that they're balancing it out by adding to a lot of complexity to this. Like by what I mean is that I like things getting balanced out. I like the idea of the double turn having a negative effect, so it's not just the automatic choice. However, my issue with the way they're handling this right now is that they're adding so many like caveats to the rule that like I'm worried about the future now. Because right now, I don't think this is too big at the moment. But my issue is that if they keep continuing along this route, like how much more complex is we're getting here? Because like is it going to get to the point where, okay, so if I went first in the previous round and I choose to go again in the next round, and there's like, okay, I'm down by 10 victory points, and also my opponent also is contesting 50% of the objectives, and the temperature outside is between a certain threshold and it's not raining, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's like there comes a point where you have to actually ask, okay, do like how do I is there a better way to balance this than just giving like an entire list of little things, that little buffs here, anyway, like I'm saying, I just don't want, again, I just, like I said, I don't want this to end up like late third edition or late 40k ninth edition, where it's just laughably overcomplicated. They're trying to like fix a problem by just throwing rules at it rather than fixing the fundamental problem. Okay, long rant over. So big updates to Honor Guard. So basically, how it works is that each player can use one of their can pick an Honor Guard, and they can pick an Honor Guard ability in each round. Now there's been a change up though. It now interacts in another crucial way with regiments. So basically, if a player has more regiments than their opponent, so the person with the more regiments, again, that whole thing where they're trying to encourage you to take regiments rather than infinite auxiliary, they can use a second different honor guard ability, but they must pick a unit that is in a different regiment and it is not led by the general to be the honor guard for that ability. So essentially, what this is doing is it's trying to encourage you to bring up additional regiments, not just like take one regiment and fit your whole army into that one. That's what they're basically trying to do here. And also you cannot pick units in a regiment of renown to be an honor guard. Again, they really don't want to give regiments of renown anything special. They're just there to be allies. So as we can see right now, we have like, okay, so we have basically, so all the original ones have been updated, and we actually get 2 new abilities. So specialist assignment has been updated in that you can pick a unit, but that's not leading a regiment to be that regiment's honor guard, and then they get a special ability. So they can get like anti-infantry, anti-cavalry, etc. And in any turn that that honor guard charged, that unit's melee weapons have this effect. So basically, the idea is that it's like your general assigning an honored unit to go do something specific on the battlefield. So if you're fighting, like this is something you can do, you can tailor a bit. Like if your opponent is bringing a lot of monsters, well, give them anti-monster. If there's a lot of war machines, give them anti-war machines. If you're fighting Caradron, et cetera, et cetera. It's meant to give you a little more flexibility on the battlefield universally. Bodyguard, it's basically the same as it was from the other one. It's meant like it's supposed to be you got to keep this close to your general to get an effect. Now, unlike maybe some other ones, it's not like a -1 to wound, or gives them both like a ward save. What it does is it subtracts one from the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by units attacking attacking your charge. And also neither so basically, though, here's another thing though. The regiment's leader and the honor guard, neither of them could have charged in the previous round. So you can make it so it's -1 attacks, but neither of them kind of charge. So the whole idea is to make this more defensive. And I think I understand them doing that, because I'm sure there's some people who've probably gotten frustrated in the past with like things like Archeon and a whole unit of Varangard getting this effect on them. So basically you're making two very strong, already very durable units more durable, and still letting them be on the offense. No, this one's more for defensive. So that I get. Uh, Priority target. So this one essentially is you pick a friendly unit. It's same as the other ones. It has to be leading. So basically you add +1 to hit rolls and rune rolls for attacks made by that honor guard unit that target the enemy general, or the enemy honor guard is in the enemy here. So essentially, what this is that this is like the Uno reverse card for your opponent's general, or leader or whatever, and their honor guard is to basically go and fight them. So it's discouraging you from getting your general or honor guard too close to your enemy's general or honor guard. That's perfectly fine. I mean, the truth is that one is probably, it can be pretty good, because in a lot of cases, a general and an honor guard can also at the same time also be that army's hammer and anvil. So you might actually want to be able to do more damage to them. Like again, like maybe it's Archeon and Varangard, or it's Nagash in a unit of and it's a bunch of like Graveguard. Maybe you want to be able to do a bit more damage to them. So that one's pretty good. Now the new ones, however, one is called a Field Sergeant. So basically you pick a friendly non-fly infantry hero in but not leading a regiment. So basically it's one where a hero is included in another regiment, to be that regiment's honor guard, and you can pick a unit, in reserve. You basically add 2 to the move characteristic of friendly non-fly infantry units while they're wholly within 12 of that honor guard. So this I actually think is kind of neat, because one of the big things that's been really holding back foot heroes is that they a lot of times basically what they kind of do is they sometimes don't always give enough for the risk of taking them, because they can often be easy to snipe down, etc. This is really good because it can more speed on your units, especially for slower moving armies, is a very good thing. And on top of that too, what we're going to see pretty soon as well is that there's been a far greater inclusion of your ability to include foot heroes in other regiments. So this is a lot more doable than it was before, because if they had not done this, I don't think this would be taken that much, because it was relatively rare to have to be able to take a hero in another regiment of another hero's regiment. That's not longer the case anymore. And now Prize Beast. Well, this essentially is basically the monster one. So what it basically does is it allows the monster to ignore the effects of battle damage ability. In addition, add 1 to hit rolls for combat attacks made by the honor guard. And it also specifically mentions the companion weapons. Now, again, I don't know what's going to happen with this one, but the biggest thing takeaway from me is that they're finally addressing the issue they have with companion weapons. Like the whole they keep trying to put, like, here's the problem that I've seen too much. They keep trying to give give like these special little bonuses or these little things that you're supposed to give to monsters, but they never specify if they're meant to work with their companion weapons, because the whole point of companion weapons is that they don't get affected by pretty much anything. So and they always forget to include, oh no, wait, this supersedes the companion ability. So I'm just glad they're finally, they're catching their own mistakes here, and not, like requiring them to have to release like 3 or 4 FAQs just to say, yes, it affects companion weapons. Yes, it affects companion weapons. No, ignore that. It does affect companion weapons. Exactly. It's just, I'm sorry. I don't like. It's just one of those things. It's just companion weapons is just one of those things that I think it was good in principle, but in practice, all it's just making things so convoluted and so confusing and just so needlessly. Like I get what they were trying to do, but I just don't think in practice it worked out. That's my 2 cents on that. So, so keeping with the theme that this is very extensive, there's been some updates for Spearhead as well. I'm just gonna skim over these here because I'm not quite as involved in Spearhead as maybe some other people are. I like it, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot to cover, and I didn't want this to be like 7 hours long, so I'm just gonna summarize it pretty quickly. Basically, Stormcast Eternal, Cities of Sigmar, Caradron, Lumineth, and Ideneth got the majority of the updates right here. There's been some changes to some abilities for them. I think these are all perfectly viable. Again, changes to Spearhead, I feel, have to be a lot more careful because there's a lot fewer unit options in every Spearhead. So you got to be careful of like, because you can't really like nerf something too hard, because if you make something in a Spearhead unusable, you're really doing a bad thing to the player, because that's like, you just made 20% of my army worthless, and I can't switch it out. So I realize they have to be very careful when updating Spearheads, because they don't because there's a lot less variety than the main game. Again, there's been chaos, death, and destruction all got some change ups. I'm not sure how much these are going to affect things in the long run, but hopefully they work out fine. So yeah. Okay, now we're getting into the big stuff. The points adjustment. Also, I just want to point out too. There's also been some change ups, like minor change ups to like the core rules. Like I know off the top of my head, there's been some things like where you don't have to put down faction terrain if you don't want to, and some minor like paragraph spelling changes here and there. I'm not going to cover those extensively because I feel like those have been covered already, kind of like in the main articles and like by others. But they're in the PDFs online if you want to check them out. They're pretty easy to find, and also in my opinion, they're pretty much all summarized in the summarization page in this PDF anyway. So I don't really think the other stuff really makes that much of a difference. But feel free to disagree. So anyway, getting back here. So biggest cities of Sigmar got some major points reductions. Actually, some major points reductions, especially in regards to some less than well seen units. Like for example, the assassin got a hefty points drop. Maybe we'll finally actually see the assassin, because I actually think it's a good model, both on the table and just to look at. The battle mage got a reduction. In addition to that, we've got all of the free guild marshals became free guild veterans, so then they can be included in other units. Regiment now. See, this is the beginning of the big, I would say, one of the biggest trends in this battle scroll, in that they all what was trying they're really pushing the idea of allowing more heroes and regiments, thus allowing that's giving people more freedom when designing their army, because so often not they basically had to just keep taking additional regiments just to fit single heroes into an army, because there was too much restriction on what you could bring in every single regiment. Like it was just making a system that was essentially supposed to be easy complicated, especially at the higher level of list building. So I'm glad they're finally they listened to the feedback and are giving more variety. So yeah, and on top of that, the Steam Tank Commander can also be taken as a free guild veteran. That, in my opinion, I think is the biggest thing, because it just the Steam Tanks are just I feel like they're good units, but they can have issues with like being fit into the regiment system. So I just feel that's a really good thing to do right there. Plus, also getting a pretty hefty points drop. Yeah, like I think Cities of Sigmar got some of the best points drops and out of the whole thing because just look, you can just tell by looking. I mean, Pontifex and Extra got a 40% drop. I mean, okay, I guess that's okay. Yeah. The only thing that went up in points is just the hammerers and the executioners went up just slightly, just by 10 points. And you want my honest opinion? I think I get why they did that because the executioners and the hammerers are in fact the only like hammer units, quote unquote, that the army has. And I feel that the hammerers especially can be very points efficient. Like with the buffs you can get off on them, between so with some of the human units and especially with the Duardin units, you can get hammers that hit like absolute freight trains. So I understand, and on top of that, they are very cheap even with the 10 point increase. So yeah, I could see them wanting to just nerf them slightly, but they're still perfectly usable. And the executioners as well. Like they're again, the executioners are one of the few ways in the army to still get to be able to spam mortal wounds. So I understand them going up. Yeah, no, I think these are good all around. I think I think the cities of Sigmar are in a good place overall in that regard, and I'm glad. I'm really looking forward to see how this affects list building. And just rounding out the cities of Sigmar, yeah, again massive points reductions across the board here. Again here, I really do feel they did a good job. Like they're real, like GW, like just by looking at this, I just really like that GW is clearly seeing that there's some units that maybe could use a little bit of help in the points department. Excuse me, in the points department, and are really working to fix this up. And this one, besides a minor increase on Iron Breakers, which to be fair, I think is warranted again because Iron Breakers can get an insanely durable when you start piling on the buffs on them. So I think that's a reasonable. But I really feel, but they're really giving like I think the right things, some points in decreases, especially things like the War Hydra and the Steam Tank. Just giving some more incentive to take those really like those really big monstrous units. So I think that's really good. Like yeah, like, this is like hundreds and hundreds of points of drops across the whole army. So I really do believe this might actually allow between this and what and the allowing you to bring heroes more in other regiments. I think we're definitely going to see maybe some more list variety coming in the future for City. So, Daughters of Cain, pretty much what I expected. They didn't really see any specific any points up increases, but again, they did get what I was expecting. There is the you can now bring again more heroes and other regiments. Specifically, you can bring the Medusae Iron Scale. That is now a Coven matriarch, along with the other Coven matriarchs like the High Gladiatrix, and stuff like that. For the most part, I don't think Daughters of Cain are really like struggling immensely in the current meta. Their biggest problem is that it's the same problem they've always had, is that they can hit surprisingly hard. They just really are lacking in like long-term durability. So they have to like live and die by their ability to pick who they're fighting at any given time. Now I will admit though that I think for the most part I think the points adjustments are fair. Because again, things like the Blood Rack Medusae and the Blood Rack Shrine, you're just not really seeing those a lot. Everyone just like bringing like max squads of like Blood Sisters and Witch Elves and stuff like that. And we're not really seeing the Snake Ladies as much as we want. So again, giving them a little more incentive to be taken, I think, is a good thing. Uh, Not really much more else to say here, except I pretty much saw all these coming. There was no general points increases, but there were some decreases on units. You're not really seeing as much, especially from the snake, especially from the more specialized units like the Snake Ladies and the like the shrines. So anyway, yeah, I'm okay with. Fire Slayers, in my opinion, I think they got a much more I think they're going to get a lot more out of this update than maybe some other armies is because for example right here, as you can just see, they got a ton of new heroes have now become Grimnir's Chosen, like the Auric Rune Sun, the Rune Sun Magmadroth, the Battlesmith, all these all like so many of these oh, even the Rune Father on Magna Drop, believe it or not. So there's so many new units are now can now count as like Grimnir's Chosen or Volcatrix's Chosen. So this is and the thing with Fire Slayers is you have to remember the majority of their units are basically heroes. So you always so it can so you it always was kind of annoying for them because a lot of the units you want to bring, especially your monsters, they're all heroes. They don't have any generic monsters, etc. And oftentimes those monsters, while maybe not the best, they oftentimes could be like your hammer or your anvil. So it was annoying in the past, figuring out the regiment system around them to bring as many as you could because again, Fire Slayers, whether you like it or not, want you to bring a lot of heroes. So this definitely is going to help them a lot too. And also on top of this, a lot of small, but I'm think perfectly reasonable points adjustments for the army. Like nothing too drastic, especially not to the extent of the other armies we saw, but still pretty not nothing to sneeze at either. Again, pretty much everything in the army got a points drop except for some obvious auto takes. So yeah, no, this is going to be pretty good too. Like Fire Slayers, I think probably I think I can afford to go up a little bit in the rankings going forward for like competitiveness. So I think this is definitely going to help. Now there still is some issues with the army in general that I think is holding it back a little, especially in regards to things like movement and speed. But at the very least, I think this will free up like list building shenanigans a little bit. So the Inet Deepkin, not as drastic a change up as in because to be perfectly honest, I think they're in a pretty good place overall. Just a few points adjustments, and again, the current trend of giving more heroes, more regiment flexibility. Now they've become Isharan emissaries, they're called. So that's perfectly fine. I have no real strong opinion on this right here. I think Idoneth have still the same problem they've always had. They're a good solid army that can have problems with like internal balance and some units just lacking proper competitiveness internally in the army. And nothing again, I still don't think that's really changed much. But we'll see how this changes up here too. At the very least, it'll make your regiment creation easier. Now, Caradron Overlords, so basically, they haven't, like, they did, from what I can tell, I don't think they got any new guild officer change-ups, because to be fair, pretty much everything could be taken in any other regiment in the last book. That was kind of their thing. They're basically, honestly, like, that was kind of like, to be fair, that was almost the Caradron Overlord's unique thing, in that pretty much every hero could be taken in any other hero's regiment. That was almost like, because that was like fluff wise and like like tactics wise, that was their thing. I think in a lot of ways they're basically just taking that and just giving it to every army to an extent. So basically, all we're really getting is just some pretty good points drops. Again, I don't know. I don't think this is really what I was hoping for with the Caradron Overlords, but I think because basically what I want, I want them to change up how their embarkation works for their ships and their units, because I think a lot of people don't really like the way it's structured right now, where they're basically like clinging to the sides of their boats when they move. They're not actually getting in anymore. I think some people actually, I don't know how widespread it is, but I've definitely seen some opinions that they want that rule to be changed back, where you're actually embarked on the ship. But again, whether that changes or not will probably not happen in a Battlescroll. That'll probably happen in like like when they get their Battle Tome update. But anywho, again, these are perfectly fine. I don't really think it's going to drastically change the army fundamentally. I think it at least not from this. Like I think maybe they might go up a little bit. They'll have a few more points to spare, and also they'll be, as long as they bring their boats, they'll be a little stronger in melee, which I think is a big deal for them. But we'll have to see how this works out. I do honestly believe though that Caradron just need a Battle Tome update more than just points decreases, in my opinion. Lumineth, this is one of the, in my opinion, though, this is one of those armies that I was expecting to hit with some nerf bats, and honestly, I wasn't wrong because as it stands, Lumineth are one of those armies that are really pushing at the limits again of like where like in terms of competitiveness that GW doesn't want them to cross. I forget where they are right now, but I do believe there's been some points in the meta where Lumineth Realm Lords have broken above the threshold of competitiveness that GW doesn't want. So, and also from what I've seen, they're just a solid army all around. So I was expecting some nerfs, and they did. Nothing too drastic, really, just some minor points adjustments, and that's pretty much it. I think Lumineth, I like, for better or for worse, I think Lumineth overall are kind of in the position that GW kind of wants them to be. They're pretty good overall all around, and I just don't have a ton to really say about them. The only real thing they gained some more hero flexibility. They got some points. They got quite a few points drops, some minor points drops, but still. Uh, if anything, if this just, I still think we're still going to see pretty much the same kind of lists for Lumineth, but maybe this might just encourage people to bring a few other units, just to change around. I must admit though, I don't think Teclis really needed to go up anymore. I don't really feel that he's really like the all-encompassing mage that he was in previous editions. I thought he was pretty good where he stood. Honestly, actually thought he could maybe go down a little, but that's just me. Again, like the obvious stuff, like the Hurricane Wind Mage, of course that went up. The wind stuff always seems to be really hard to beat, and the obvious choices again. Aurelian Sentinels and Wardens. Like, again, those are the other two that went up because, again, as pretty much since the dawn of time, Lumineth have all these different units, but, Sentinel and Warden spam just seems to be like what seems to be like the go-to option for a lot of people, that and like, all their Wind Mage stuff. So, again, I just really hope they change it around because I'm not saying those are bad units. No, what I'm trying to say is I still think they're too efficient units. They're just, this army has all these different units, and people just bring, max bows and max spears and maybe it's a little bit of cavalry. Like, come on, we got to do more to encourage variety here. I want to see some different stuff in here, not just shooting across the board with like 1,000 arrows. I know that's effective, but GW, you're the ones who make it that effective. Just saying. So, Seraphon, wow, yeah, these are actually way more extensive than I was expecting. But to be fair, I don't think I really shouldn't have been surprised. Seraphon, again, they're like a lot of armies in the game right now, like with like Lumineth and to a lesser extent Stormcast. Is just that they have these giant roasters. But again, like for example, Slaves to Darkness, they have like just some units that are just so obviously better than so many other units you never see anything else. So again, with like you got like mage spam and you got like big you got like in like cavalry, but you don't really see much of anything else. So again, this highly extensive points drops across the board. It's all the obvious things that you're probably not seeing as much, like like the Bastillodon, some of the Bastillodons, the Croxagors, some of the like the spawns of Chotek, the Terror Wings, just stuff you're not seeing because the internal balance is all off. Like you're just seeing more things like the Raptidons, etc. Like they need again, just very much like again like Slaves of Darkness. This GW needs to work on the internal balance of this army, and I do feel this is a step in the right direction. But in a lot of cases, though, I still don't think this is going to encourage like mass amounts of people to take some of these units, especially things like the Terror Wings. Like what they need to do is I honestly think they just need a new battle tome. They need to make a new battle tome, and they need to start from scratch. They need to look at the units that just no one's taking and actually understand why they're not taking them, and then work towards dealing with the internal balance. Because again, when you see, because here's the problem: when I see this much points decrease across the board, at first you're thinking, okay, that's great. But then you have to stop and think to yourself, if they have to adjust this many units, points wise, like in just a single battle scroll, yeah, you have to stop and think, well, how come there's so many units they feel need points drops? Like, are they just maybe not intrinsically good? You know, like it's stuff you kind of have to stop to think. That's why when I see so many points, like point decrease in a single army, I don't always think that's automatically good. I feel like Seraphon, they need some work, even if they're not necessarily doing bad competitively. I'm talking about like internally. Like, you need the army as a whole has to be able to function against itself, not just otherwise. What you have is you just have a bunch of mono builds and a bunch of units that just never get seen. Okay, so now the big one, Stormcast. So, okay, one thing I will say before I continue, Stormcast have a very big caveat with some of their listings. Like, don't forget, Stormcast went through the great culling of 24 so a lot of the units even included on this listing, they unfortunately have an expiration date. So just never forget when you're looking at these, make sure you pay close attention to the notes section of this sheet, because some of these units literally have an expiration date. So just keep that in mind if you're going to be using them long term. One big thing so to note with Stormcast is, like a lot of things that we've seen so far, a lot of new heroes have been are now have a lot more regiment flexibility. Like, you've got like the Knight of Zeros, or the Knight Judicaire with the Grift Hounds. They're now called Stormcast Exemplar, which allow them to be used more in other regiments. So again, your heroes have a lot more flexibility. Having said that, a lot of other things like the Knight Venator and the Knight Zephyros, they're writing it down that they've only got till June of next year to be continued to use. So if you still have them, I would probably suggest get your use out of them or sell them off quickly if you don't want them anymore, because you only got about a year, you got less than a year to use them. Beyond that, they got some reasonable points drops. With the Knight Draconis, the Knight Vexillars, the Knight Aquilars. Just some pretty good points drops. Here and there. As expected, they didn't do so far. It looks like no real points drops for the phased out units, because again, GW really, honestly, probably doesn't care about these anymore if they're balanced or not. Because if they're balanced, well, good, just leave them alone. If they're not balanced, well, so what? They're gonna be gone soon anyway. The problem will solve itself. So yeah, just some okay stuff on this particular. So the Lord Imperator went down some points, and also it's also a Stormcast Exemplar. So wasn't expecting that, but okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine. The Lord Veritant went down a few points. The Lord Terminus is a Stormcast Exemplar. Again, perfectly fine. They definitely, like, as always, GW wants the new stuff to definitely get use, and like with everything, if you want it to get use, you got to you got to make it easy to use. So that's a good thing. And also some of the heroes went down, like Tornos the Redeemed, the Bandus Hammerhand, Yunastra. Again, like I said, this army is so glutted with heroes. You got to make sure that you got to make, if you want them to be used, you got to make them competitive. So yeah, they got to go down in price, especially stuff like Tornus, who people have pointed out isn't he's a little lacking compared to in rules, especially compared to guys like Bandus or Indrasta. Okay, so now moving on into some of the units. Yes, honestly, it sometimes it still shocks me sometimes how many units Stormcast really have, especially in their hero department. Like, holy geez, like, again, like when if you actually step back and actually look at all the units that are here plus the units that are getting removed, you actually, a part of you kind of realizes, you know what, maybe they're doing the right thing, calling the line a little bit here. But then I recall, well, yeah, but that's still people's armies. So, kind of, I have to remind myself to have compassion in this regard, because, again, people's armies are getting gutted in a lot of cases. So I got to remember that. Anyway, yeah, basically, like, mass amounts of again, points drops across the board. Again, but again, too, whenever I see this again, this brings me back to what I was saying with like the Seraphon. When you see points drops a lot across the board here, it can be it can be a good thing, just wanting to give some units competitiveness, but it can also be a sign that a certain army is having some issues with internal balance. Stormcast, I kind of feel kind of like toe the line between that because I do feel a lot of their non-heroes are actually can compete against each other, but they do have some very efficient options. So I'm gonna lean this more towards just being like just helping with competitiveness for some units. Because for example, all these here are like the Dracothian guard stuff, and I don't think a lot of these are bad per se. I just maybe just slightly overcosted. So I think these are perfectly fair in this regard. Annihilators went down a little bit. I guess yeah, I always thought they were okay, but yeah, Annihilators are fine. Cascaders went down. The only thing so far is going up is the Griffhounds, and I think that's pretty obvious. They were always just very cheap objective grabbers. They probably wanted to like nip that in the bud a little bit. Again, still not going to affect them much here. They're still cheap objective grabbers, so we'll still see Griffhounds. Stormcast, it never ends. It never ends. I'm gonna die of old age here. Okay, so what do we got right here? Yeah, about what I expected. Yeah, so Liberators went down a little. Looks like they've gone down a little bit. That's fine. The Quester Soulsworn, that's fine. All this kind of stuff here. I can't remember. I can't remember if so, like with a lot of these, like if how much they went down with the last, how much these have changed since the last battle scroll. But I'm just reading them off right here. I just don't really believe in like memorizing stuff like that off the cuff. Like there's just life's too short to be memorizing every little thing. Yeah, that's what rereading is for. um, Anyway, yeah, so Vanguard, the Paladors went up. The Paladors with Star Strike Javelins went up. Long Strike with Long Strike Crossbows. Again, they're shooting because that's one thing a Stormcast always could say they had going for them. They had very efficient shooting. So that obviously that would be the thing getting nerfed. Otherwise, that is just a lot of their like wing stuff, their extremist chamber stuff, and some of their warrior chamber stuff. Yeah, that all has to go. So yeah, overall, yeah, I agree with this. These are perfectly reasonable. Now, do I think it'll affect Stormcast immensely? Hard to say. Right now, I think Stormcast are in a very balanced position. Again, I think they're well within like that 45%, 55% win ratio like zone that GW wants all armies to be in. So they're a very perfectly fine middle of the road army. So again, I think maybe this might help them a little bit, or maybe it won't affect them at all. But either way, they're where GW wants them to be. So they have nothing to be ashamed of either way. So Sylvaneth. I'm not as familiar with Sylvaneth in general, so I'm not really quite sure whether how good or bad this is going to do for them. I will admit they did have some pretty hefty points drops across the board here, which probably shows that there's probably some internal balancing issues in the army, like Spite Revenants going down 30, the Twist Weld going down 20. Drycha going down 50 points. Wow, you don't see 50 points that often. So she must have been really not being taken much. 40, yeah, no, like there's oof. Yeah, I guess they were a little overcosted. And it looks like the Arch Revenant is now another Forest Sentinel. Yeah, from what I've been seeing is that Sylvaneth I feel took a bit of a nerf come the last edition. Like they were doing really good last edition, and a lot of their movement shenanigans got nerfed. So that's probably why some of this probably is going down the way it is to compensate. Hopefully it works out for them. Again, I'm not as familiar with them, so I can't really comment more than that. Beast of Chaos are here. They are what they are. Again, as you can note in the notes section, all these all have an expiration date. I feel it's a good thing that GW is still taking the time to update them, etc. Keep them relevant for how long they last. But again, I just don't really feel the need to really be like paying close attention to like Beast of Chaos for at least for me, because again they're an army on life support right here, so it's just I just don't. I think it's just. I just like to just just get it over with that they're gonna go. So I don't really follow them too closely. Blades of Corn. Okay, so Blades of Corn had some change ups, like had some change ups to like their regiment options, and also to their notes, like what can be taken, like the new baleful lords can be taken. Got some change ups to what can be taken in particular regiments. Oh, I probably should, maybe if I didn't, if I maybe forgot to mention that for some other armies, but I'll just say it now before I forget again. Yes, there've also been change ups to like certain what can be taken also, and also some other units regiments to make up for the like just to clarify what can be like just to clarify what can be taken in the army. So not just so some heroes can be taken, but also some new other non-hero units can be taken in certain new regiments as well. So that's something just to remember. Maybe I forgot to mention it for some of the others. If I did, I'm sorry. But anyways, yeah, Blades of Corn. They're maybe on the lower end, I think, right now of competitiveness as it is. So again, that's probably why they're going for hefty points drops. Again, a lot of points drops across the board here. I hope they get some. It leads to them getting maybe a little bit higher on like the competitiveness area. With a little bit of freedom with like their regiment options and also with their points drops, give them a little more flexibility. Again, Blades of Corn I feel can be perfectly reasonable with a good player, but the problem with Blades of Corn is they can be very punishing for a bad player because the whole point of them is like killing things and letting yourself die. But if you're not care, but the problem with that is it can encourage a very aggressive play style, which in turn can lead less experienced players to sometimes overcommit and then just get absolutely trashed because yes, you want your things to die, but at the same time you don't want them to die too quickly. And sometimes trying to kill stuff too fast just leads you falling into like gambit traps. So that's something that Blades of Corn has always had problems with. Now, Disciples of Zinch, I think, as we've all known, they are currently one of the worst offenders right now for not being into the win ratio zone that GW wants. Like right now, for a while now, even by GW themselves, Disciples of Zinch have pretty much been fighting it out with Nighthaunt for the most competitive army in the game right now. So obviously, yeah, they got a very hefty amount of points excuse me, points increases across the board. Not a ton of change by the looks of it to their regiment options. I guess that GW feels they're good enough as is because again too I think that might have been intentional because GW definitely wants to nerf them more than help them. So that might have been just intentional. Yeah, mostly just like like a lot of their heroes, especially the obvious offenders like Kairos went up in points. A lot of their worst offenders in their units like the horrors and the flamers. They all went up in points here. Yeah, just an obvious attempt to try and nerf the army without involving major rules changes. Because again, I think GW would prefer to like do like fundamental rules changes in the Battle Tome updates, not in the Battle Scrolls. But this is definitely probably the most they're going to probably attempt to balance out disciples before they get a new battle tome, in my opinion. Disciples of Genius, they just have a lot of shenanigans. Like their horrors are very good anvils. Their spells make very good long range damage. They're just very flexible in the current edition as well. So we'll see if this has a fundamental change. Personally, I don't think it'll make a huge difference. I still think they're going to fall just outside, but I do think they might bring them down just a little bit. So head knights, they've seen the head knights of Slanesh. They've definitely seen some points drops. From what I've been seeing, is head knights are again, they're not the worst army out there, but they're definitely a little bit on the lower end. That I think they can afford to come up a little bit. So I think these points drops will definitely help in that regard, especially to some of their heroes. Because the thing is, don't forget with head knights, most of their damage dealers can be found in their hero selection. So you definitely want to lower them in price. They've also made some points adjustments to things like their seeker chariots and their slangors. Again, all things that just aren't really being taken as much, like the demonettes, because from what I've been seeing is that for example their demonettes, they've more or less just been overshadowed by like things like their cavalry, like their slick blade seekers and their hell flares and their stuff like that. Like they do need a little bit of help in that regard. Uh, so I hope this actually, so I hope that maybe this will definitely help them just get up just a little bit. Because I feel that Heat Knights, they definitely have the tools they need to be a very competitive army. They just need the right kind of like tooling of both rules and points to get them there. Again, too, I still think that Euphoric Killer still needs a little bit of playing around with. But again, I don't think that's going to come in a battle scroll. We're just going to have to wait for when they get their battle tome update for that to happen. So Magakin, not a ton of changes for them, but still quite a bit. But again, like everyone's gotten large points adjustments, so this is not really that surprising. Mostly just some change ups to the heroes because again, I think some of their heroes just aren't being taken as much as they could be, so they wanted to change it up a little. The only non-hero update is just to their Beasts of Nurgle, just got a minor change. Um, Honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't know how much of a difference it's going to make because in Magakin, pretty much everything is expensive. So even with these, I'm not really sure how much of a change this is really going to have in the long run. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this will actually end up making them rise a little bit in the competitive. Like they're not the most competitive army in the world, but they're not the worst either. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so Skaven got a significant amount of changes. Like really wow. Like I think this one, they honestly, I think this rivals Stormcast for the amount of change ups I've seen so far. Which again, is again, but I think this is less about competitiveness, more about fixing internal balancing issues. Because again, Skaven really have some problems with internal balance. Like you got an entire battle tome of unit options that puts some other armies to shame in terms of selection, and you just never see them because there's just so poorly balanced against themselves that some units are just the obvious take. So basically, we've got massive amounts of points drops among their heroes. Pretty much almost every hero got a points drop. A couple of units got added as Skaven Overclaws, like the Bombardier, the Engineer, the Galvanier. They're all now been included. In terms of units, like just some stuff we're not really seeing as much, like the Doom Wheel, the Hell Pit, the Brood Terror. Obviously, the Brood Terror, that one I'm not surprised that people have been saying for pretty much since it got introduced is that it looks cool, but it's just not efficient enough to be super competitive. So that's definitely a nice little drop. Hopefully it does because I think Skaven with the right tooling have the ability to have some of the best monster mash in the game, but they just really need some rebalancing, especially internally. Um, so yeah, that's that. So yeah, I'm perfectly fine with all. As for the rest of the Skaven, the Rattling guns are obviously went up in price. Like they're just so much an auto take right now. It's not even funny. Like I just that and also their shooting in general is just really powerful. So I'm just good. So I'm actually surprised some of their other shooting wasn't nerfed, but whatever, it's fine. Yeah, they're Rattling Warp Blaster, Storm Vermin, Warp Grinder. Yeah, all those other war machines went down a little bit, giving them a little bit of competitiveness. Again, like I've said before, this like when it comes to points drops, there's many reasons for it. This one I feel is internal balance. We got GW wants you to take some of the other stuff. They don't want you to just be taking the same stuff over and over and over again. So hopefully this at the very least this leads to a little more variety. Maybe not so much in the competitive scene, but maybe the casual scene might see it. Slaves of Darkness, about what I expected. A bunch of heroes got added as ruinous champions again, because like Stormcast and Skaven, they have so many heroes, especially foot heroes, but you just never see them because there's just too much competition. And so the, yeah, so they pretty much most of the heroes, a lot of heroes got some points decreases. Exalted Hero God of Chaos actually went up by 10 points, which I'm a little bit surprised by. I don't recall really people seeing him use it much, but okay, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't really see it being taken a lot, but maybe that's just me. The Chaos Furies going up in price, I guess, because I guess they are kind of efficient as objective grabbers, I guess. Marauders, Savagers, and the Wilder Fiend went down in points because, as I mentioned before, they look cool and they got some interesting lore, but tabletop wise, the Dark Oath side of the book is not very good. They don't do enough damage. They're too fragile. They're a horde army competing against hammer and anvils at the same time. So they're just not really compete. They're just not that competitive. So again, sure, throw them a bone with some points drops, see what happens. Maybe we'll get taken more, maybe not. No idea. Other than that, no really other real changes. I guess they like where they are. Like again, but also to take into account too. Don't when you're looking at these, don't forget the notes. Remember, most of these are just demon units that can only be taken in a Legion of the First Prince army. So don't get too excited on this page. A lot of these will force you to take Bellacor's Army of Renown. So don't forget that. Beyond than that, the Raptorix went up by 10 points. Again, not entirely sure why they did that, but again, I guess it's because like a unit of 6 or 2 wounds each, and they're pretty fast, so I guess they can be reasonably they can be reasonably efficient objective grabbers that can fly around because they do have fly. Again, I don't know. I don't really see them that much, so not quite sure if that was necessary, but okay, well, whatever. And of course, Vanguard went up by 10 points, but that's not going to change anything. People bringing Vanguard are going to still keep bringing Vanguard because they're probably the best unit in the book. Actually, they're probably one of the best units in the game. So they could go up by 20, even 30 points, and you'll still see them. So probably anyway. So yeah, no real change there. Now on to death. Flesh eater courts. Wow, they got a lot of points drops. Like literally, pretty much everything in the army got a points drop. Which which is very obvious. They're lacking. They have issues with internal balance. They need like I said, in my honest opinion, I think they need a lot more than points drop. These points drops are nice. Don't get me wrong, but I definitely think there's definitely like some war scrolls that need some changes as well. But again, I'm not going to go into that here because we're already getting kind of long in this video. So pretty much everything got a points drop, sometimes significantly. Like for example, the zombie, like the Royal Zombie Dragon with the Abhorrent went down 40, Royal Terrorgeist 40, Gore Warden 20. Nagash went down 40. Okay, yeah, whatever. And every other unit went down in points. So that is not, again, that just goes to tell me that the army really needs some help. And I hope they get it at some point in the future. Beyond that, it's kind of obvious what it is right here. It's the problem that they've kind of had for a while now because the days of them being able just to bring back whole units is gone. The army as a whole is still can be pretty fragile, and because you can't just do recursion quite like they used to, they can have problems with keeping units on the board. And it's also some units are still can have issues with hitting power, so that's a problem with the flesh eaters as a whole. But still, I still like the army from an aesthetic and a rules wise. I just feel like they need some fundamental changes. But hey, well, all these points adjustments, I'm fine with that. I mean, this is definitely probably going to help them out at the very least a little. So better than nothing. And of course, the obvious, the Night Haunt. Per capita, I honestly feel the Night Haunt probably took the biggest number of nerfs in this battle scroll, which was honestly pretty obvious. Like, for example, their discorporate got a workaround, and now per capita they probably got the most points increases of any of these. I think they got it honestly. Some of these I think, yeah. I mean, just looking at here, their Hex Rays went up 20. Their Bladegeist Revenants went up 20, which are obviously some of the worst offenders right now for their hordes. They got almost all their heroes like most of their heroes got a point increase, not much, but still. They did get a few cursed souls though for the Spirit Torment and the Tomb Banshee, so that's a little more flexibility. But yeah, no, this I was honestly a no brainer when it happened. The Night Haunt, it's no surprise. Night Haunt are a problem right now, and honestly, in my opinion, I'm honestly shocked they didn't get more points increases. I was expecting pretty much every single one of their units to go up in points, and some of them by like 20 or 30. So, in my honest opinion, I think they got off lightly. all things considered, considering that they're this much out of the target range for balance, and it just like honestly, I'm a little bit surprised some of these heroes didn't go up like 30 or more points. So anyway, hopefully, I'm pretty sure this will bring them down, but the problem is that they have a long way to go because right now they're in what, like 60 to 62% win rate, and they got to get to at least 55. I hope this gets them there, but this might honestly, I don't even know if this is enough because Nighthaunt can still be very efficient. Okay, so the Ozark Bone Reapers. Honestly, not a lot to talk about here. They're about what I was expected. Catacross, who's the big trouble right now, he went up 20. Some Mortisans went down. Cavalos Death Riders went up. The Gavazar went down because he got nerfed. It got nerfed to hell from the previous editions. The Tekakoric cohort went up a little. So yeah, honestly, I'm not really seeing anything that really jumps out at me is going to make a huge amount of difference. I think they're an okay army. They're still going to do okay. I don't think there's really going to be a ton of difference, but we'll see. Soulblight, however, have gotten a much greater change up than in that from what I can see right here, they've gotten quite a few quite a few new units on the board right here. So we've got like massive amounts of lowering for the heroes and even for the other units. In fact, not a single unit went up in price, and they even got a couple regiments got a few additions. Excuse me, they got a few regiments for like regiment additions got changed, and a couple more heroes became Death Rattle Overseers. Excuse me. So yeah, no, this is a. Now I'm gonna be honest. I don't play with or against Soulblight so much. So I'm not really sure how much of a difference it's gonna make. But I can tell just by looking by the sheer scale of the changes. I do believe this is gonna help Soulblight's ranking maybe go up a little because like you don't see this many changes, not some change. I don't think they're gonna go down. I think they might go up. But we'll definitely have to see. Again, maybe this is just a clue that Nighthaunt need a fundamental change if this many units need points adjustments. So we'll see what happens. Personally, I kind of feel like like Soulblight are very similar to a lot of units in the book that I feel like they could be really top tier with just the right amount of adjustments. And I wonder if this is it because and compared to a lot of other armies, when I look at Soulblight, just at least skimming them, when I look at Soulblight's war scrolls, I actually don't think any of them are ridiculously bad. Like I think there's some really good stuff in there that just doesn't get utilized due to competition. So maybe these points adjustments are all that's needed to help internal balance, and allow the Soulblight to edge up a little bit. But we'll see in that regard. Bone splitters are bone splitters. Again, same with Beasts of Chaos. They currently have an expiration date, so I'm not really gonna go over them too much. If you're still using them, great. But again, GW really obviously doesn't care about them anymore, and I'm kind of wondering if we should too. So for better or for worse. So now the Gloomspite Gits. Well, honestly, the Gloomspite Gits are, in my opinion, kind of what I expected. Like pretty much, like okay, they got to like I said, they got some points reductions, a few point increases on some obvious ones. And most of the drops are basically on some of the lesser seen things, like some of the Ragnarok, some of the Manglers, some Spore Splattas and stuff like that. But overall, not as many changes, or at least not as significant changes that I was expecting. Yeah, the problem is Gloomsky gets, in my opinion, they're kind of in a weird place right now, where, in my opinion, they're both one of the more competitive armies, but also one of the worst armies. And by that I mean is that from a competitive standpoint, I kind of find they're like I'm seeing a lot of competitive stuff is like pretty much just Tragos, and the non-competitive stuff is essentially more or less everything else in the book. Unfortunately, like I'm seeing some good stuff from like Trogherd stuff, but like the spiders are still lacking. Their hordes, like their Moon Clan stuff, is a little bit of lackluster. I still don't know what's going on with this Git mob stuff because we haven't seen enough to know what's going on. Their squigs are a little hit and miss at times. Like it's just a really really uneven book right now. Again, I think they definitely need a new battle tome. And don't actually think these are going to do have much of a significant difference. I think pretty much the stuff that's already being taken will still be taken, and the stuff that hasn't been taken won't see much more play because the stuff I feel that they're really spamming really didn't get much of a change in this. So this one is kind of just one of those ones where I don't think it's going to do much overall. So Iron Jaws. Okay, so Iron Jaws did get some stuff in this here too. They got some regiment options were taken out to take advantage of the new head stompa. Some new heroes can be included in more regiments as per usual, and quite a few of their heroes, especially their big tough heroes, like their Maw Crushers, saw some significant drops. Like for example, like as you can see right here, Gordrak got a 50-point drop. That's insane. I mean, to be fair though, I probably needed it. Like I can't tell you how many times I've seen people bring Gordrak in. He runs into the other army, he kills maybe a unit or two, and then he just gets crushed to death because he's that's because he runs into the same problem with a lot of big monsters, and especially big monsters that are fast. Once they run way ahead of the enemy of the main army, they get into the enemy, but then they just get bogged down and just ground out because they just get surrounded. So many of their heroes got some big points drops. Not so much on their other units besides their Maw Gruntas. Personally, I'm a little bit surprised maybe they didn't see some more price cuts because, and in fact, I don't even, this might not even be a significant enough because, the reason I'm saying this is because even though that like their Maw Crushers got some significant drops, you need to understand Iron Jaws are in a very bad place right now. Like they're easily one of the worst performing armies out there for a multitude of reasons. Like they can be too expensive. They can have trouble competing. They can have trouble in the objective game. They may not do it. They don't do. They might not do enough damage point for point. Like there's a lot of problems with them here. So again, I hope this brings them up. We'll probably, at the very least, we'll probably see some more Maw Crushers on the table. But I don't know if Maw Crushers are the answer because again, like Maw Crushers can have issues with the objective game. So uh, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But personally, hopefully, I honestly think that this might help because at this point, I don't actually think there's anywhere to go but up for them. Because again, depending on which poll you're looking at, they actually might be the worst army. So, uh, there's nowhere to go but up for them at this point. Cruel Boys, I think are in a better space that Iron Jaws are, but like that again, that's a pretty low bar to clear. Like, let's be honest. For the most part, they got again, they got some change ups to like new things like Swamp Beast, basically like a lot of their monster related stuff can be included in more regiments, so that's good because don't forget, like pretty much all their monsters are also heroes. So you definitely want to be able to have some, and a lot of their monsters can also be their hammers at times. So you definitely want to be able to get as many monsters and heroes in as you can, especially if you're going for offense. Beyond that, pretty much just their Hobgots and the Marsh Crawler Sluggoth got some drops, so that was good. Um, Beyond that, yeah, I think this might actually help them at the very least because it'll allow them to more easily get certain monsters onto the table more, and given some changes that have come to Cruel Boys in the new edition, I think they're actually doing okay. I think this will definitely help them. Cruel Boys, even though they're definitely not the most competitive thing, they're at least doing better than what some other armies are, like some other bottom tier armies are doing. And yeah, they definitely have some tricks that you can definitely pull off of them. I think they can be a reasonably solid army. But again, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how the future holds. Personally, I think they're just gonna still continue. I think they're probably gonna do a little bit better than Iron Jaws just because they have a little bit more flexibility, especially in regards to things like movement and shooting. And I think they're just a little, and I just think they're a little more versatile. I think that's what's helping them. That's what's helping them a lot. Ogre Maw tribes. Well, the thing that I was expecting didn't happen. I thought GW was going to do something to try and nerf Gut Busters a bit in order to, like boost up Beast Claw. But really, they didn't. They just gave certain things, a price cut. Mostly like stuff, just like the Gorger Maw pack and stuff like that. Actually, if anything, actually, I'm surprised the over gluttons actually got a decrease, considering I'm seeing a lot of people spamming them. But I guess they still kind of need it. Like, 'cause look, if you only really got one trick, you can't take that trick away because then the army's broken in the bad way, you know. So I guess yeah. Beyond that, like I said, they got a few things in regards to like they got some changes to the Husk Guards and the Icebrow Hunters, specifically the Beast Claw Raiders, so they can be more easily taken in regiments now. Because don't forget, a lot of their best units are basically their heroes who ride monsters. So again, same concept as the Cruel Boys. You want to be able to get them as easily as possible into regiments. So get them in there. Um, Beyond that, I think ogres definitely have the potential to be a very competitive army. But again, I still feel that we're probably it's still their more competitiveness leans more towards the gutbuster arm of the army. Even though they made some changes, not just to this but also to rules, like for example, what they did with like they did with like the rules change up for the beast claw, and also giving trampling charge a little more oomph. So, but then again, that can work for everyone. So, excuse me. So hopefully we'll see what happens right there. I do hope that now, admittedly, I have to admit I'm a little bit biased in this regard because don't forget, I was here in the horror days when like Stonehorn Beast Rider spam was like the all meta, and I still remember those horrific days that plagued us. So a part of me still kind of feels like maybe the Beast Claw should are paying for the sins of the past, but at the same time, how long do they have to pay for that? Sooner or later they got to make a comeback. So. I hope this brings it up. But at the very least, I do think GW is on the right track with them in turn like Ogre Mawtries as a whole. Because again, I'm not just talking about it being like competitive from like competitive in a sense against other armies, but also competitive against themselves. Because like many armies out there, Ogre Mawtribes are an army at odds with itself. It's constant. And right now the Gutbusters kind of have the upper hand, but maybe that might change following this battle scroll because the direction they're definitely going in a direction that could even them out more. Sons of Bahamut really wasn't much change. Just honestly, the only significant change was really just to their man crushers. Because I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I don't really. I think they're actually pointed pretty fair, especially now that they're getting some attack output increases. Like, let's be honest, I don't really think there's really a lot they can do. Like, well, there's not much they can do with them because let's be honest, right here, the problem with Sons of Bahamut, and this is going to continue until it's fixed, is that they have so few units that they can't really have to be very careful about nerfing or buffing any specific unit because you can really easily make these units like too good for their points very quickly. So they didn't reduce their points or increase their points because they basically increased the army's attack output. And the only thing they really except for like their man crusher, so they got a price decrease to compensate. So I'm perfectly fine with that. I think again, I don't want to return to like early third edition where Sons of Bahamut were broken as all hell. But at the same time, though, I do think they definitely did need some fixing up, as I mentioned, with their damage output. Because again, a lot of times this army could be real good damage sponges, but then they're running into like a buff squad of like, liberators or chaos warriors, and they're kind of just bouncing off, which, models this huge, that's not really what you want to see. So, yeah. The regiments of renowned not doesn't seem to be too big a thing. There's just basically some points adjustments for like the mercenary gargants, just some minor points adjustments. That's probably what I was expecting, honestly. Beyond that, nothing. There's not really any significant changes with them. I think the Regiments of Renown are a good idea. They're a different way of doing allies. I know some people hate them. I know some people like them. I know some people love them. I'm kind of in the range of I think they're good. However, I still feel that allies still was still fine in the last book. I don't think there were too many ways like they were broken, though I do admit there were some cheese bills that could be made. But they are what they are. I think regiments, as they stand, are perfectly fine. I think also another thing too. One big thing I've had people against them is that people were afraid that GW isn't going to support regiments of renown in the long term. And well, I admit it's a healthy amount of cynicism can be a good thing, but sometimes I feel that some people can just like they're just being cynical for the sake of it. Like I don't really I'm not really seeing anything that says that GW will stop supporting regiments of renown. If anything, I see they seem to be doubling down on it more. So I think it's fine to say that regiments are fine for the foreseeable future. So some of the other regiments, Gotrek went down. That's perfectly fine. I think definitely Gotrek definitely deserves to go down in points. He's been significantly nerfed, especially to his durability this new edition. So he's fine. Actually, in fact, I think actually, if anything, I think they need to bring back maybe some of his maybe some of his durability from the previous edition because right now, he's just basically just a really good beat stick character that doesn't really do anything else. I think he needs some of that. He needs to bring back some of that might of previous editions to justify him a bit, but whatever. Saviors of Cinderfall that went down, that went up in points. Honestly, probably understandable. They could be those units can be very points efficient because they can be very durable and they can do a lot of damage. Not much other changes there. And finally, the death and destruction ones. Some minor change ups right here. Nothing really significant. The Summer King's court that was pretty high. Summer King's entourage, sorry. Still, I think that's quite a bit. They're still it's still a pretty expensive. But then again, Usheron he's pretty powerful in and of himself, so you could probably still see him. And for destruction, the Odo, God Swallow, the Beast Smasher, that went down in points as well as all the Mega Gargants have. Again, perfectly fine. Nothing else to say. Okay, so in total, yeah, that was a lot to cover. Overall, yeah, there's definitely a lot of good here. Overall, this is probably definitely one of the biggest Battle Scroll updates I've seen. Maybe I can't even remember the last time I saw one like this. They definitely put a little more effort into this one than the last one because the last one, in my opinion, was just such a nothing burger that this one just looks so much better in comparison. I feel that yes, we're definitely going to see some meta shifts right here, but I hope it's the meta shifts in the right direction. Like for example, I want it. Like I said, I need the worst. Night Haunt have been too much of a problem too long. They need to come down. So have Disciples of Zinch. So have some of the bad ones like Lumineth. They all need to come down a bit. But also the stuff at the very bottom. Like the ogres and the Iron Jaws and like all those other ones. They need to come up a bit here too because the problem with and the ones at the bottom I feel are the most egregious because I feel they all have the tools they need to come up a bit. They're just missing something that's holding the army back. Otherwise, a lot of we still even saw a lot of good stuff too. Like for example, I think the Sylvaneth were okay. Cities of Sigmar and Stormcast I thought really got some good balancing right there. It's clear that I think GW is starting to see what the problems are more because I feel like in the past. They kind of made changes that didn't really do much because they don't really fully understand what the problems actually are. So it's good to see that at the very least, even if these aren't going to fix the problem, the fact that they're going in the right direction is a good thing. But as for a lot of some other armies, I don't feel. I definitely don't feel enough was done because at the end of the day, some of these armies, the thing holding them back is that well, their indexes kind of suck. Like they need new battle tomes to drastically change up what's wrong with them. So like certain things like I think like Flesh Eater Courts and Sylvaneth and Iron Jaws and stuff like that. I think they all have some problems that are just built into like their war scrolls and their allegiance abilities. I think they just need a change up in that regard. Like you can only adjust points so much. Sometimes you have to just tear something down and build it back up. That's the only way to do it. But anyway, that's basically my thoughts on it. I hope you stayed to the end. Good on you if you did. And I hope you're having a good day and good luck with the new battle scroll. Cheers.